Hello, Buckaroo Banzai?
You a messenger? What you got here?
No, wait a minute. I need to see Buckaroo Banzai in person. My name is John Parker. Identify yourself, nah?
Blue Blazer regular, Pinky Carruthers. Sorry, John, everybody needs see Buckaroo. Later.
Hello, cadets. Welcome to another episode of the Big Monster Briefing Room. This is episode 117 at the beginning of season 5. We have come so far. And we have a very special show tonight. Somebody came to me with an interesting training film to do called Mad Monster Party. And this is a Rankin bass feature film featuring Boriskarloff is one of the main characters. And we were able to get the Rankin bass historian archivist to join us on this jaunt through this movie. And that is Rick Goldschmidt. We'll bring him up in just a minute. But first off, let me bring up my able-bodied assistants, Master Sergeant Havoc, and of course, Major Millie Hazzard. Oh, looks like Millie's on assignment.
I'm on assignment, and it's a pleasure to serve, and we're very happy to be here.
And I've got my decapitated gnome filled up for this show. And, okay, well, it's always lovely to see you, but we understand that sometimes you're on assignment. We get it.
Yes, I don't even want to tell you what I'm covered in. I don't even want to tell you what I'm covered in right now.
Well, okay, then. And Havoc, always good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yep, I'm out here in the woods.
I see that.
Hunting, looking for Bigfoots and all that stuff. So, yep, trying to help Millie out a little bit.
This training film also takes place on an island that has some gnarly woods on it.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk about that when we go through the timeline. But let's go ahead and bring up our special guest, our very special guest, Mr. Rick Goldschmidt.
Hello.
And there he is.
How's
Lots of Rankin and bass stuff up on the walls there.
Yeah.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
We're so glad you can join us for this.
Thanks.
So, again, Boriskarloff, in the latter part of his career, did this film. This is about the same time he did The Grinch.
Right.
He did The Grinch That Stole Christmas with Chuck Jones.
Yeah.
No Thurl Ravenscroft in this, but
No.
he definitely would have fit.
Right.
And we have an interesting array of characters. We have Dracula, we have Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the Invisible Man. We have Yetch, which is a kind of a Peter Lorre kind of Igor kind of character.
Right.
And all of them played by Alan Swift.
Yeah.
He did all the voices for that. He also did Felix Flanken, the main character in the film.
Right.
Chef Machiavelli.
Yeah.
He's a deadly chef. And the captain and his first mate. They were all done by Alan Swift.
Right.
So he was kind of a Mel Blanc in this thing because it's an animated film.
Yeah. And he was a New Yorker too. So Arthur and Jules hired him. I think Jules probably saw him on the stage because he did a lot of Broadway things. Okay. And he actually did one for Rankin Bass called A Month of Sundays, which was off Broadway.
Okay.
And he was just a well-liked, great character voice actor.
Okay, I've got to remember to say bass instead of bass. Sorry about that. My bad.
Oh, no problem.
Also in this, Gail Garnett as Francesca,
Right.
the assistant to Baron Boris von Frankenstein. We finally get a
Right.
Boris Frankenstein.
Yeah.
A lot of different Frankensteins. You've got Wolf, you've got Henry, you've got different Frankensteins. We finally get to Boris Frankenstein, played by Boris,
Right.
which is nice. And the monster's mate, played by comedian Phyllis Diller,
Yeah.
who was very big at the time.
Oh, yeah. And she loved being a part of it because she got to sing. She was a
Yes.
musician and she loved to sing. So she was very happy to be a part of the film.
That's awesome. Yeah, she gets to sing a song called "You're Different."
Right.
Right.
It's the
we'll
first
talk
song.
about that in
It's
later
the
in
first song of the movie too. So
It is. It is.
right off the bat.
Well, I mean, you got the title song. sung
Well,
by,
yeah.
Ethel Ennis.
right.
Right.
I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
So okay, let's go get our timeline up here. We'll start talking about the movie. If you see anything that jogs a memory or of a story that you've heard or what have you, please by all means cut in. Again, this is Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass. Shriek. we close in on the island, and this is with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman and the specials that Rankin and Bass did. It was all for kids. This one kind of had an adult flavor to it.
Yeah, and it also had a jazz score, which
Yes.
is unique in itself. Jules Bass and Maury Laws wrote more upbeat, kind of happy tunes for the Christmas specials.
Right.
But for this one, Maury said he was kind of spoofing the Bond films of the day.
Yeah.
And, that's why it sounds like a Goldfinger opening,
Yes.
the Ethel Ennis song.
Yeah.
She was your Shirley Bassey.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that was it. At the time in the '60s, man, it was all about James Bond, and everybody was poking fun at James Bond at the time, trying to ride that gravy train.
Right.
So
And
we see
Batman had just hit too, so that's
Right.
why you see the eek and the awk and everything on screen.
Right.
And even Dracula says later on in the film that he's the original Batman.
Correct. It's when he changed into a bat. I think when he's on the ship,
Right,
he says that, and then he flies out.
right, exactly.
Okay, so we have a nice little pan up to the castle, and we get our first look at Baron Boris von Frankenstein.
Yeah, and actually, Boris, this was his first animated special. This and The Daydreamer were the first animated things that he did for Rankin Bass, because they recorded Boris in 1965. And Arthur actually went to Boris's home in England because Boris wasn't in good health. He had a few different things going on. So Arthur brought him a mobile recording unit to record him. And what's interesting about that is for his song, One Step Ahead, that had to be timed out perfectly because he didn't have the music yet. And if you notice, he's kind of speaking his lines. So he's not really singing. There's a chorus in the background that's singing.
Right.
So everything was done in England. And Maury Laws actually lived in England for several years because the orchestras were done, the orchestrations were done in England.
Oh, okay.
I think financially it was also a good move for Rankin Bass, but obviously they did a great job too. So he got some really phenomenal musicians in his orchestras.
Yeah, the music in this is great. Like you said, it's jazz music. It's really upbeat and
right.
But again, you've got the kind of scary flavor to it and all, and those backup singers in that Boriskarloff song. Wow.
Right.
We'll see those in a minute. A little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So he has made the Doomsday liquid,
Right.
like 100,000 times worse than nitro, worse than the atomic bomb. And he puts it on the feet of a raven and sends the raven off. Oh, this is him actually doing the Frankenstein thing where he gets lightning to strike it. Of course, everything you get Frankenstein does, he has to have lightning strike it.
Right.
There it is.
Yeah, and what's unique about Mad Monster Party is it's Boris animated, which has never really been done before.
Right.
And to Rankin Bass's credit, they didn't get a voice actor to imitate Boris Karloff, which they could have easily done.
Alan Swift could have done it probably.
Yeah, and Bob McFadden did it for Mad Monsters, which was an ABC Saturday Superstar movie because Boris had already passed away by then.
Oh, okay.
That was 1973. But Boris enjoyed being a part of Mad Monster Party, and his voice was good for animation. Rankin Bass never hired anybody just for name, star quality. Phyllis Diller's voice is very animatable too. Mickey Rooney and people like that, they all had these very distinctive voices. So
I'll tell you, Mickey Rooney Santa Claus is the one that sticks with me.
Yeah,
it does. And again, I think they made a sequel to the Grinch. It's Out Grinches the something or other. And it just wasn't as good because it didn't really have Boris on it. I mean, when you see the Grinch, come on, it's Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
When you see him do that gnarly smile with the teeth and the termites, it's Boris Karloff. Come on. So for me anyway, I mean, I like Jim Carrey and all, and I like, but no, it's Boris Karloff for me.
Well, I became good friends with Sarah Karloff, his daughter. And she didn't really, when we first started communicating, she didn't really understand the appeal of Mad Monster Party. She saw it more as a children's film that was long forgotten about. But I would say since the time that I first communicated with her back in the 90s, Mad Monster Party's popularity has only grown since then. And if it gets more national exposure, it would really take off. I know Rich Coe's Svengoolie here in Chicago, he's been trying to get the rights to show it on television.
Yeah.
But Turner Classic Movies, at least the last I checked, they held the television rights. And they were showing it at like 3 a.m. with little movie marathons. I think one time even Rob Zombie might have hosted it. Then they put it on in prime time about 3 or 4 years ago. And they had me go on Twitter and do tweets during the movie. So that was kind of interesting. And I think that did pretty well. And I'm hoping that they do another. They really should show it at Halloween. Because
you would think.
That's when I watch it. And it's not really, a horror film because it's so family friendly.
It's I'll tell you, it's a nod to the Universal monsters. And I know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they couldn't do the Universal monsters per se. For instance, Alan Swift wasn't doing Lugosi as Dracula. He had his own thing going on.
Right.
But Dracula sounded like this. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, the thing about Dracula, too, is Jack Davis did the character design.
Yeah.
And Jack Davis,
magazine.
And he always drew Dracula with a monocle.
Yes.
And a big nose. And Jim Henson kind of, I wouldn't say stole, but he based the count off of Jack Davis's and Mad Monster Party's Dracula. And he even told a guy that I know, he told them that he did that. So I can confirm that that was his inspiration for the Count.
Yeah,
And it's just a really interesting design to Dracula that I think it's not a copy off of the Bella. Like you said, it's more of a unique Dracula.
And the Invisible Man with the fez and the sunglasses and the smoking jacket.
Yep.
And that was the Sidney Greenstreet voice that Alan Swift did. Yeah.
Oh,
so that was nice. He said that he based Felix flanking off of Jimmy Stewart, which is kind of a Jimmy Stewart voice, but it's also his unique take on it.
Right. It's Jimmy Stewart-esque.
And I think the character really is a parody of Arthur Rankin, because calling him Flankin, and he wore glasses and he had the hair kind of combed to the side. That was Arthur Rankin. And he got the girl, Francesca, which I know Arthur Rankin liked the character of Francesca a lot.
Oh, who doesn't like Francesca?
She's got that Christine Hendricks look going.
I think the reason they got Gail Garnett originally was she was an RCA recording artist. So was Ethel Ennis. And the soundtrack to this was supposed to come out on RCA. It even said it in the credits, but it got shelved, and it didn't come out until I asked Maury Laws if there was an acetate version of that, and he gave it to me, and we put it out on CD back in the late 90s. Oh, wow. So Gail Garnett, they kind of lucked into getting her because she was an actress that did ethnic parts on things like Have Gun Will Travel and Bonanza. And she could do these different kinds of voices. And she did a really sultry voice for Francesca, which makes her even more appealing.
Yes. She got that husky telephone 800 number voice.
Right. So I would say out of all the Rankin Bass productions, that's probably my favorite female character. That, her and Jessica in Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're strong female characters with really a great, well-developed character.
Yeah. I'm wondering if Pee Wee Herman borrowed his outfit from Felix Flankin.
It's possible.
It's true.
Yeah, there's been
the same outfit.
So many people have. When I did a signing at the Shag store in West Hollywood, and there was a line going around the block, and I wasn't sure why. They were there, to because they were such big fans of this film, and that area is where all the animators are and all the artists are for the studios. And Mad Monster Party was a huge influence on Tim Burton, the original Pixar people like Andrew Stanton and Lasseter and people like that. And even Shag, he did a Mad Monster Party print. He loves Mad Monster Party because it's kind of a kitsch type, very hip 60s take on the monsters. Yeah. And the animators just go crazy over it. So everybody out in Hollywood grew up with it and was inspired by it.
Right. Okay. Let's show another slide here. Our timeline will start moving forward. I think, yes, he takes the elixir, puts it on a raven's claw. It flies out onto a tree, and then we see the mushroom cloud. And he says, quote, "The raven nevermore." And he seems very happy about that. And then we open our credits with the monster. Mad Monster Party. We get our song from Ethel Ennis, and we get the invitations going out to the different monsters. And the gag with Mr. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde is the transformation. He's got to make the transformation in every scene he does.
Right.
Which is pretty funny because he's.
Oh, and the Invisible Man, his note is in invisible ink. So I thought that was that was clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and last year we put out a deluxe Blu-ray release of Mad Monster Party, and it was a first on many levels. First of all, it put the film in the right ratio.
Mm-hmm.
It had never been released in the correct ratio.
Right.
So we did that, and we cleaned it up and restored at the very end of the film. There's a Francesca that was missing on all the DVD and Blu-ray releases. So we added that back in. And
now, where does she say the
at the very end? I think it even says it on the screen.
Felix?
Right.
She's agreeing with him. Oh, okay. We're both okay.
And that ending, I came to realize that the writing of it was the jokes were kind of written by Harvey Kurtzman, who was the founder of Mad Magazine and a very creative guy. But Len Karobkin wrote the screenplay and primarily the whole film. And the ending, I watched an episode of The Twilight Zone that I think he got that ending from, where they were robots, the creations of Uncle Boris. They weren't real people. And there was an episode like that on The Twilight Zone. So I think that's where he got the idea from. But this umbrella release is the best Rankin Bass Blu-ray to date because of the extras. It's loaded with extras, and there's even an Easter egg where King Kong, who they called It in the movie.
And I wanted to ask you about that. Why they called Kong It? But you guys, Rankin Bass had the King Kong rights at that time, did they not?
Yes.
That's weird.
But the contract, which I have with RKO Pictures, called for the series for a certain price, and then for Arthur to make King Kong Escapes, the feature film.
Right.
That was part of the deal. Mad Monster Party really wasn't part of the deal, and it was such a small role. He wasn't in the whole movie,
right?
That I think they felt like we don't want to make him Kong and pay these extra rights for just a small scene in the movie. Right. It probably had also something to do with Joseph E. Levine, who was the executive producer. He wasn't a really, he didn't spend a lot of money on his films. And
Roger Corman, huh?
Yeah, so they had to stay within a budget. In fact, the movie poster art, I included the Jack Davis art in the Umbrella Blu-ray release, and that was the poster art that Arthur wanted to use. But for some reason, whatever it was, we don't know, Levine decided to use the preliminary art from Frank Frazetta. And he didn't tell Frank Frazetta he was going to use it. And Frank had already done a color finish piece, which he never even brought into Rankin Bass or Levine. So they didn't even have that finish piece. They just ran with the preliminary ink wash pieces. And I guess when Frazetta found out about it, he ripped the poster down from one of the local theaters in New York and started raising hell on the phone, and they eventually paid him. So it was one of these weird things that, you know, Arthur and Jules had nothing to do with that. That was all Levine and his company, Avco Embassy, Avco Embassy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
a few trending films from there.
Yeah, and I know he didn't like to spend money, and he hit it big with The Graduate, and The Graduate didn't cost very much to make. It was a pretty cheaply done film, but it hit big, and he made millions off of that. And there were other films like that around this same time. Probably the biggest film that he put out during this era was Nevada Smith, the Steve McQueen movie. But Steve McQueen's company, Solar, spent a lot of money on that film. So it was kind of a combined effort. Levine was kind of cheap when it came to making movies. So I think that had a lot to do with why King Kong was called It.
Okay.
But you know, still, it works though. In the context of the movie, it works.
Oh yeah.
It's a surprise when you it's like, well, what's it? You know, it's like so they build it up and then you see it's King Kong, even though they don't call him that. But
well,
it's like,
King Kong, we have an Easter egg on the Blu-ray, on the Umbrella Blu-ray, and the head animator Tad Moshinaga, he worked primarily. He was the main guy doing the animation. He kept it, and he put him in a Japanese television show called Princess Comet, and it appears more in the episode of Princess Comet than he does in the movie Mad Monster Party. And he's beating up these Japanese gangsters and driving around on a toy car and doing all kinds of funny things. So I was glad to find that and to put it on the Blu-ray. Because you hardly see Kong, you know, until the end of the movie. So it's kind of neat to see that he was a star in a famous Japanese series.
Nice.
Okay. So the monsters all get their invitations to, and then we meet Felix Flanken, who works in a drugstore. Back when drugstores had soda counters.
Yeah, this is my favorite scene in the movie, because when you see all those people in the store, those are all typical Jack Davis characters. He always did like an old lady with a bird in the hat. And all the characters look very Jack Davis-ish. And I like Mr. Cronkite because he and Felix make a good comedy team. I wish he was in the movie more than he was.
Yeah, he's kind of like George Jetson's boss.
Right.
What the hell was his name?
Cogley?
Spacely Sprockets? Mr. Spacely.
Spacely, yep.
Yeah.
Jetson, get into my office, Jetson. Oh, Chase, Mr. Cronkite. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Again, sounds a little like Jimmy Stewart, but, you know, it's different.
And then he's a hypochondriac.
Yes.
And there's a pile of what they call Weibelfetzers, which are probably Sudafed or allergy medicine that they stocked up on, and he knocks over when he falls down. And Weibelfetzers was used in Mad Magazine by Harvey Kurtzman. So that's where they got that from.
Well, and at the end of the film, he actually carries a test tube,
right,
in his jacket that looks suspiciously like the Frankenstein doomsday device thing.
Right.
So they freaking out because they think he's got the secret that Frankenstein created. So who carries a test tube in their pocket?
Right. It's a great combination of things with Felix, because he ends up turning out to be a hero, but
Right.
he's like an unwitting. He doesn't know really what's going on too much.
Right. Right. He's kind of stumbling through everything, and
Yeah.
he's very lucky. And then we get the envelope, the invitation. A spider comes out and a moth.
Right.
And he gets the invite to his uncle's island for a big mad monster party. And his boss lets him go because he's tearing the place up. You know, he's a klutz.
Right.
So we see the monsters mate and the monster, and they're talking about the party when it's coming up. And they also do stuff with mirrors in the movie, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because of course you can't see Dracula in a mirror because they make a joke about that. He's
Right.
combing his hair, and all you see is the comb in the mirror. But that's kind of amazing that they were able to do that.
Right. They were pioneers in the art form. The Japanese were wizards when it came to stop motion animation. And I always talk about the fact that, you know, George Pal did Puppetoons and a lot of stop motion and feature films. And there were other stop motion people like Art Clokey with Gumby and Pokey and Davy and Goliath. But Rankin Bass sort of brought personality to the art form that I don't think anybody else really did. And partly because they selected the right actors and actresses to do this stuff. And in many cases, you don't really think of them as puppets, you know, like the Heat Miser and Snow Miser, to people in their mind are real characters, you know, that they're kind of fighting with each other, and they have that personality to them. That
John and Irving,
Yeah.
So it's funny because everybody recognizes Irving's voice, George S. Irving, right?
Right.
Because of Underdog. He was the narrator on Underdog.
Yeah.
But Dick Shawn was just, you know, he had made it as a stand-up comedian.
Right.
So you wouldn't expect him to be in something like that.
Right.
You know, but it's a mad world. Sure. Yeah. He's there and he's perfect. You know, but you don't think of him to do something like that. Yeah. But he's great. He's the Snow Miser, you know.
Yeah.
So we meet Francesca. She's the assistant to Dr. Frankenstein. And she's sassy. So the cuckoo clock with the zombie head.
Right.
And we meet the captain and the first mate of the ship that's going to take everybody close to the island. What they don't tell people is they're not going to actually drop them off on the island. Everybody's got to find their own way once they get a certain amount. And then they meet Dracula. You would think that Dracula would have all kinds of money. But he's broke. He's got bats flying out of his wallet, so he flies off. He actually stows away. He sneaks aboard later. He flies on board, I guess.
Right.
cheap guy. Then after meeting Quasimodo and Dracula, these guys are like all scared and frightened. So when Felix comes up, it's just like, just go aboard. We don't care.
Right. I never thought about it before, but Alan Swift's captain on this ship is sort of a Mr. Christian, you know, from
Charles
Mutiny on the Bounty.
You're right. I never thought about that. Yes. Tell them to come and dine with me.
Right.
That's right. There's the werewolf. They don't call him the Wolfman. They call him the werewolf.
Right.
Making his way on board.
And he's more like a dog in the movie.
Yeah,
he doesn't
he's got an earring in his ear too, which is weird.
Right. And he doesn't have a dual personality. He doesn't become in the Mad Monsters special that they did for ABC's Saturday Superstar movie. He's Ron Chanley, who becomes the Wolfman.
Okay.
In this movie, he's always the Wolfman, and he's more like a dog.
And I don't think anybody realizes it, but he's a werewolf all the time, in the daytime, in the nighttime. And
Right.
Dracula's out in the daytime too.
Right.
So it's like, well, okay, I guess that's something they're not going to address in this. Felix bumps into the Wolfman, or the
Right.
werewolf, I should say, and then he bumps into the Invisible Man. So there's some shtick there. He has a hard time, it's kind of like a Velma thing in the Scooby-Doo. He has a hard time finding his glasses in this scene. But there are two times at the end of the movie where he drops his glasses. He knows exactly where they are. He picks them up and puts them right back on. Like, hey, you found your glasses so fast that time. Wait a minute. So the captain, he tells the first mate, go tell the people that we want to dine with them. And the first mate is like, oh, are you sure, Captain? And of course, we get a lot of shtick with the first mate, getting scared by the monsters with the hair. This is the ratio. I got obviously the TV ratio. So because all these are obviously kind of small squares.
Right.
So I'll have to look for that DVD. And this is where Felix meets Dr. Jekyll. We find out Dr. Jekyll's on board.
Right.
And of course, we get our second dose of Mr. Hyde. Now, he says hide almost through the entire movie. That's all he says. But isn't there one line in the party that he says, like, this is the best party I've ever been to, or something like that? Doesn't he have one other line in the movie?
Right.
Yeah. Because he puts Yetch's head, he puts a pig head on Yetch, who we're going to meet in a minute. So he says, hide. And Felix thinks, oh, you want me to hide? You want to play hide and seek, do you?
Yeah, I think they would have gotten Peter Lorre for Yetch.
Yeah, I wonder
the actual Peter Lorre, but he passed away, I think it was in 65 or 66, right after he did the Patsy with Jerry Lewis. So they couldn't get him, but I think they wanted to get him.
Yeah,
because they would always.
He passed away later than that.
No, he somewhere in the mid 60s, and I'm sure that's why they couldn't get him. Either he was ill or he passed away already.
Because he did a couple of the Corman films with Karloff and Basil Rathbone.
The Raven, yeah.
Yeah, he did the Raven.
Now here's something interesting that I didn't even know when I did the Umbrella Blu-ray commentary. The poster art turned up recently, the Jack Davis original artwork. Mm-hmm. And when they did Mad Monsters, originally what I think they were planning on doing was they were going to recut this movie as a special and make it a 1 hour special. And they were going to have Vincent Price host it, because they got Vincent Price for Evil Irontail in Here Comes Peter Cottontail in 1971.
Right.
And they were going to go ahead and have him, make an animated version of Vincent Price and have him host the special. Mm. And they decided not to do that at the last minute because they went ahead and did Mad Monsters, which was a cell animated.
As a film release, yeah.
Right. So I didn't even know they were planning on doing that, because what they did was they had Paul Coker do hand lettering and they glued it over the poster, and it said all of this. It called it a Halloween special, and it had all the, things on there, and then it said, and starring Vincent Price.
Oh, wow.
So they could have got Vincent to do the Invisible Man in the movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and The closest thing that Mad Monster Party reminds me of is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because all the monsters are so kid-friendly, and it's a comedy, and it's just something that you like to watch for Halloween. It's got an ambience about it. It's not that it's not that it's like a phenomenal movie where the storyline is so good. Rudolph is kind of like that, where it's like one scene to the other, it fits together so perfectly. It's a perfect 1 hour special. And Mad Monster Party, at times, it will drag a little bit, and they even added some scenes to flesh it out, which Arthur didn't like that. He was against that. So,
like the scenes where they're sleeping and snoring, all of them are snoring.
That was all added in. And same with the chef. They wouldn't have even put the chef in it because he had nothing to do with the storyline. But they put him in, and they put these extra things in, which I like. I like to see all that stuff.
I like Machiavelli. I do.
It is a little
fun character.
It will kind of bore people or kids. Kids today, their attention span is like, they got it like with their phones and stuff.
Right.
So they're not so much the target audience anymore for something like this. And even parents might have took their kids to see this in the theater, and they might have fell asleep, in some scenes.
Hope you're enjoying this.
Yeah. But for me, it's the ambience of it. I put it on when I'm handing out the candy to the kids on Halloween, and I love it. I mean, I love the music and the voice work and all of it, the way it looks.
Well, this did well in the box office, did it not?
It went, instead of releasing it to the public as a feature film, the way it should have been released, they put it in Saturday children's matinees.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of hurt the film in a way, because the awareness wasn't there. It took years for people to find out about the movie, because when I saw it as a kid, it was on some UHF station that you barely picked up, and I saw it and I knew, wow, this looks like Rudolph and Santa Claus is coming to town and all of that. But it wasn't like a big deal where they, like the network should have aired it, and they should have said it was like a special thing.
Right.
But they didn't. So it took a long, long time for people to find out about the movie.
Do you think that was because of the producer?
Yeah, primarily, yes.
Maybe he was just selling to try to get the quick cash coming back.
Well, he made the mistake of, when he did the 3-movie deal, they put out The Wacky World of Mother Goose first. And that's an okay film. It's a cell animated film. It has some neat things about it, but it's not a blockbuster type movie. So they released the wrong
morning matinee.
Yeah. They released the wrong movie first.
Okay.
And then he had high expectations for The Daydreamer, because The Daydreamer had about 14 or 15 huge stars. Boris Karloff, Burl Ives, Sesua Hayakawa, Ray Bolger, Tallulah Bankhead.
Tallulah Bankhead, darling.
He had to pay all these people a good amount of money to get them to be in it and to lend their name to the marquee, And I think he felt like he put a lot into it and he didn't get a lot out, he was disappointed. He wanted a Mary Poppins, they said.
Yeah.
And he didn't feel like it was a Mary Poppins. To me, it's good. They made the mistake of having the
Disney,
main
pal.
Yeah, well, the main character, Chris, who was Hans Christian Andersen, he wasn't very nice to his friends as he went along in the movie, and that kind of wrecked it.
Okay, this was The Daydreamer?
The Daydreamer, which
Okay.
we put that out on Blu-ray, and I did the commentary on that too. That was released by Kino Lorber and Scorpion.
Yeah.
So the best movie out of the three was Mad Monster Party.
Mad Monster Party.
They should have started with Mad Monster Party, put it out like it was a big family film, you know, like any Disney film that they were reissuing at the time, and really pushed it, but they didn't. So I think if it aired on Svengoolie with Rich Coase, it would get a lot of people going, where can I buy that movie?
Right.
So
okay. So we're on the ship, and Felix is hiding out from Hyde still. There's where Dracula takes off for the island saying, "I'm the original Batman."
Yeah.
The others are jumping off the ship, jumping overboard. The werewolf has a raft built already. The Invisible Man gets naked, jumps in that water. By the way, the Invisible Man is not wearing pants, folks, which means he's just dangling there. None of us can see it. But now you see it in your mind now, don't you? So we meet the staff of zombies. They've got rings in their noses like bulls, which is kind of an interesting design. We meet Yetch, who can't keep his head on. So he's, of course, Alan Swift doing a kind of a Peter Lorre kind of character. Oh, Francesca. Oh, and he does poetry. So we love to watch Yetch get beat up by Francesca. Francesca flips him over there, and I'm going to crawl. If they ever do a Mad Monster Party 2, you got a voice guy right here. I can do all the characters.
Well, they were going to do that later in Arthur's life. He had Jack Davis do another painted movie poster for it called Mad Monster Party Reunion.
Oh, cool.
And they started working up some animation. They did it in CGI. And
they all blew up at the beginning of the first film, at the end of the first film.
It didn't look very good in CGI. Whoever they had do the animation, it just didn't look very good. So they never followed through with it. But
yeah, they did that with the Miser Brothers in a movie too, and they didn't look the same.
No.
It was CGI, and it just didn't look right.
Yeah, I could only get through 5 minutes of that. I couldn't watch it.
And you're the guy that loves them more than anybody.
Yeah.
That's why.
They got some of the same voices like George S. Irving and Mickey Rooney, I think they got, but it just wasn't anything like the Rankin Bass. See, the thing about Rankin Bass is the look of it. And you can't, they've been talking about making a feature film of Mad Monster Party for years.
Yeah.
In fact, I did an event at the Van Eaton Galleries in Sherman Oaks, California. And one of the producers that bought the rights to the film came to meet me. Okay. And at one time, Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon's kids got together and took an option out to make a movie of it. And I think eventually what happened was the movie that came out was Hotel Transylvania.
I was going to say, there's definitely some similarities there.
Yeah, but what made Mad Monster Party special was the look of it, and you can't replicate that on a computer. You can't replicate that live action. You can't replicate that any other way. So it's like, even if you remake it, it's not going to have the same feeling to it, the same look, and you just can't redo it.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right, so Frankenstein tells them to keep an eye out in case it decides to crash the party, and they've got all these old planes, and we've got some shtick going on with Yetch. And then Frankenstein talks with Francesca and tells her about his heir, Felix, coming to the party, and he's going to turn everything over to Felix. And she's not happy about that. We start getting the monsters showing up for the ball, the party. There's Dracula, Wolfie, you old devil, you. And they made the monsters mate look like Phyllis Diller.
Right.
So she's one of the few characters. I mean, Boris, so it looks like Boris, kind of. And Phyllis Diller, a little peach tea there. Phyllis Diller looks like, or the monster's mate looks like Phyllis Diller. For some reason, Quasimodo is carrying the mummy around.
All right.
Throughout this film, they're like buds or something. They're like roommates.
Yeah.
He carries his sarcophagus around. We get Dr. Jekyll shows up, makes his entrance, and I think one character says, "Well, where's Mr. Hyde?"
And
I think we all know where Mr. Hyde is. So we get the transformation. Hyde. And more shtick with Yetch getting clobbered. Oh, Francesca. And the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right.
Which we saw it earlier, but we kind of glossed over it. He's at the party, and the Wolfman brings him in by smelling him.
Right.
And then we have the chef Machiavelli saying, "Hey, Machiavelli, what's the matter, you? I make a great salad."
I think the funniest thing in the whole movie is when he pinches Yetch in the butt.
why are you always pinching
coming out
me?
of the soup was pretty funny.
Enough with the pinching already.
And there's the octopus coming out of the soup. And he actually makes a comment about something's not right with one of Machiavelli's dishes, and the knives come out. Then we find out why they call this guy Mafia Machiavelli. So at the dinner party, Boris explains to them he's got the doomsday liquid, and he's going to turn everything, he's going to retire and turn everything over to his successor. And so they all are going, "Oh, hey, I want to be the successor." You know, and the only one that knows that it's probably going to be Felix Flanken is Francesca. So she's going to cut a deal with Dracula. Those big fangs. And of course, there's the monster's mate. This is probably the best line in the movie. She goes, "She shouldn't have thought so loud."
Right.
Great line. Because Francesca is thinking to herself that she wants to take over, and then she's right next to the monster's mate, and the monster's mate hears her thought.
Yeah.
It's too loud. The monster is kind of made in his master's image. He kind of looks Boris Karloff in the face.
Yeah. And he's one of the only Frankensteins that has no hair.
Yeah.
Jack
The only one that wears a
Davis.
tux.
Yeah. And Jack Davis, he had a long history of drawing monsters by this time. He was the original artist on all the EC comics with the Tales of the Crypt
Right.
stories.
Yeah.
And then he did all the record album covers for like Zachary and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there were a few others that he did for RCA that were pretty big with all the monsters on the cover. And, you know, he developed these monsters through his work in Mad Magazine and even Cracked and some of the other things.
Correct.
Where he's always parroting the monsters. He did the Funny Valentines for Topps.
Uh-huh.
And there were monsters on a lot of those cards with,
Yeah.
you know, making fun of the monsters. So, I mean, he had a long history of drawing monsters, and
Yeah.
they all kind of culminated in this movie because he was asked to do all of them. You know, all the.
He's like, finally.
Yeah.
Okay, so the party kind of they pull out the band.
Yeah.
Phoebe and the Tibias or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've all got this orange page boy kind of haircut. These skeletons.
Yeah.
To my memory, I can't remember any of the big rock and roll bands having that hairstyle, but it works here.
It's kind of a Beatles style, and I think it's clever that they have the Wolfman take one of his bones
Yes.
off the
That makes
leg.
sense.
Yeah. Come
So
back
the
with my
Mummy does dance.
bone.
The Mummy does his dance with Phyllis Diller.
Now
And,
the dance was actually choreographed by Killer Joe Pyro.
Okay.
He was famous for the Peppermint Lounge in New York at creating dances. In fact, there was even an ad I found in a magazine or TV, or it might have been in a comic book even, where he's doing all these sort of twist-like movements, and it was like you can join his dance school kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he was famous. And what they did was they had him create this mummy dance, and they
they're
filmed
singing a
it.
song, "Do the Mummy."
Yeah. And they filmed him, and they actually sent the film to the animators.
Oh,
But with Animagic, it's hard to capture all those specific moves.
right.
So it doesn't really come off as a, unique dance. It's kind of, they're just herky-jerky dancing around, but they intended it to be a more...
They wanted it to be the Batusi.
Right. Exactly.
So the Hunchback also joins in and does his own little dance there.
Yeah.
Did they put that film of him dancing in the extras for the DVD?
No.
Were they able to find
because it's in Japan somewhere, and it might have even turned to vinegar by now.
Oh, geez.
Film doesn't last long if you don't store it properly.
Don't store it properly. Okay, so Francesca meets up with Dracula out on the balcony, and the monster's maid is listening. And they do a song. It's Our Time, right?
Right.
Where Dracula does a little tap dance.
Yeah.
And then they find out the monster's maid is listening. So the fight begins. Frankenstein comes in, picks up Dracula, throws him around.
You know, it's the '60s because when Francesca and the monster's mate have a fight, they have these cat sounds.
Yeah.
That's right. They have a cat fight.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, it's the
And
'60s.
they tear each other's clothes off.
And they tear each other's clothes
So
off.
they're in their bloomers.
Yeah.
Mothers in the theater covering their kids' eyes. Don't look at the puppets, honey. And it goes into a pie fight.
Yeah.
The creature from the Black Lagoon getting a pie to the face. He gets the Invisible Man with a pie in the face, and we see why the Invisible Man. It's a good thing he's invisible. And this is another great line in the film. Dracula falls in the punch bowl, and he goes, "Punch anyone?"
Right.
And Frankenstein decks him.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the scene.
And that was a clever way to end the scene, and also a great, for the animators, a great camera angle on that punch, too.
Yep. So, now we come to the sleeping scene where everybody's doing shtick, where everybody's snoring, and the other person that's near them is trying to shut them up.
And that wasn't in the original script. It was added in.
It was added to give some extra time.
Right.
How long was the final film? I should know this, but it's an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was close. I think it was 94 minutes.
Okay,
something like that.
Yeah,
and probably originally it was closer to a television special.
Yeah,
length, an hour. It doesn't really hurt the film to add in those scenes because they're kind of funny.
No,
I
they're
think.
fun. Yeah,
But they're not necessary for the storyline.
it doesn't move the plot forward.
Right. And Rankin Bass was always careful about moving the plot along. They didn't want, Maury Laws always said, they didn't want it to just stop and then they have a song, like some movies do that. Disney, I think, sometimes does that.
Yeah.
But they wanted the song to move the plot.
Right. So yeah, when just a song just pops up out of nowhere for no reason, people are rolling their eyes. Oh God, a song.
Right. Right.
We're in an hour now. Are you okay to stay with us for a little later?
Sure.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure. I always ask. So, okay, here's the Invisible Man. Having trouble with the Wolf Man. Howling while he's trying to sleep. He bandages him up. Or he puts a surgical mask over his face, I think. Keep his jaw shut.
This should do it.
And let's move forward. I just love the fact that he's not wearing any pants. just free balling it throughout the movie. What do we have here now? Oh, it's the monster and his mate, and her. We've got some shtick going on with her nose twinging, for lack of a better term. Her nose, when she snores, it's
right.
It makes him crazy, so he electrocutes himself just to go to sleep.
And how many kids are going to get the fact that they're all hung over? You see all the liquor bottles all over the floor and stuff.
Again, there's a lot of adult stuff in this movie. And again, they did the same thing. They did the same thing with cartoons at the time. I mean, if you watch Underdog, if you watch Bullwinkle, there's a lot of adult references in there that kids just don't get, but they don't care.
Yeah, there is.
It's put in there for the adults. They're watching with their kids,
Right.
So, yeah, this is probably the most adult project that Rankin Bass did.
Yeah.
And here's where Felix arrives. He's got his Pan Am bags, in his little boat.
Yeah.
And his golf clubs.
His golf clubs. There was a scene they could have used to pad the film, golfing with the quicksand and when the monster's trying to kill him. I think I'll use a 9-iron. All right. So he gets there, and Boris is waiting for him on the beach, waiting to meet him and Francesca. Again, those Pan Am bags crack me up every time. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It doesn't say Pan Am on them, but you know what those are.
Well, here's another thing that I think that's why they made Felix Flanken a version of Arthur Rankin. Arthur Rankin was a jet setter. He was a traveler. He went to Japan. He was the only one out of Jules Bass never went to Japan. Arthur did to oversee the animation, and he loved Japan. He went back there many, many times. And we flew to a lot of other countries. So that's one of the trademarks of Arthur Rankin that they gave Felix Flanken.
Yeah, we talked to Linda Miller, who was in King Kong Escapes on the show, and she mentioned the fact that she met him there. He could speak some Japanese, and he was just very charming. And she's convinced that he was the reason why she got the role, because she was only 18 at the time.
Yeah.
And she couldn't act. She was a model.
Yeah, I think Arthur...
she was the right look. He thought she was the right look for the part.
I think he found her on the cover of a magazine, maybe even on a flight to Japan, because it was a Japanese magazine. So, yeah, he loved Japan. He just
Nothing but
loved.
great things to say about him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Felix falls out of the boat in front of Francesca and gets her reaction. And then he pulls Boris into the water. He's trying to help him. There's the reaction shot.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
And again, the facial expressions on these things is way beyond, any other kind of animation. I mean, they must have had hundreds of mouths and eyes and eyebrows and things.
Yep.
To put on these puppets.
And even making water in stop motion was a difficult task.
Well, in some parts, yeah, they're using cellophane that's been bunched up.
Right.
But yeah, again, some of the things that they were able to pull off with light and with just ingenuity.
Right. And they had believable sets, like it drew you into the world that they're creating, and you don't really think of them as sets. It's like the scene is believable.
Right.
Which is difficult to do in stop motion because basically they're setting up maybe a table where they peg the puppets underneath the table, and they're moving them across the set that's no bigger than a table. But on the film, it looks like it's infinite.
Regular size, yeah, exactly. But when you think about it, like with the Godzilla, the kaiju movies, they create those intricate cities and villages and stuff these monsters stomp on.
Right.
With so much detail. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's meticulous. There's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They're meticulous. An eye for detail.
Yeah.
And they're taking the boat back to the castle. So again, Francesca, and Yetch, not a good match. Francesca talks to Dracula, and she says, "Look, I'm going to take him out and show him around the island. Felix Flankin, I want you to kill him. Here's 3 spots you can kill him in."
Right.
and Dracula botches it.
Yeah.
Just because Felix, again, God protects the innocent.
Right. And that sets up sort of a slapstick routine, because Dracula's always just missing Felix. It's kind of like in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, when the Wolfman is in the room and you see him and you get afraid and Lou moves and he keeps missing him.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely some homage to that. And here we have the werewolf.
Right.
And Felix picks up a stick. He's like, go get it, boy. Yeah, there you go. He makes him run off, and then he bandages up the mummy to the tree. Hey, I got first aid. Bandages him up to a tree, and of course she's not happy. He hasn't smacked her yet. We're gonna talk about that. So there's Dracula making his move, and he gets sprayed in the mouth. Bug spray repellent.
And there's this
Here we have the tree where he's swinging down from the branch. And he misses him like 3 times. Well, let me pick this sandwich. Oh. And he misses him again. And then he actually measures it out and he makes a run for it, and he ends up hitting a tree with his fangs stick in the tree.
Right.
So,
Don Duga did the storyboards for this movie, and that was his favorite part, was drawing out these scenes where Dracula was just missing them.
Well, you can tell. I mean, again, it's the way it's animated. It's very funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was actually they actually did this shtick on you remember the Ghostbusters TV show from the Saturday mornings with Forrest Tucker and
right, Larry Storch.
Larry Storch, yeah.
Larry Storch, yeah.
They did a Dracula episode, and he ends up biting trees a couple of times in the episode. So they took that right from this. So Boris is very happy to see his nephew. He tells him, I'm going to retire, and I want you to be the head of all the monsters. And Felix doesn't know how to react to that.
No.
So we move into the song and dance. You gotta stay one step ahead.
Yeah, I like this. The way that it's animated and all those little monsters in the scene. Some of those little monsters still exist in Japan because I have a friend who goes to Japan once a year or so. Yeah. And he says that he's seen those puppets there from the little monsters that are in the Boris Karloff song. I also like how they put them on a TV screen. During the song.
That's another thing that they did. They have a TV video kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
we're going back to that side. I'm glad you actually went back to that side because I love this bit, and that's Boris is feeding his pet blob.
Oh,
which just comes out of the doghouse and envelops the plate full of food that he's
right.
left for him.
Which is kind of a tribute to the movie The Blob,
right?
And also I forget what scene it's in, but the plant that's eating the water can, that was in that, I don't know, was that a Roger Corman movie with the that plant in the shop?
Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah.
That's kind of a tribute to that, you know? And of course,
that actually, went on to, they did a musical afterwards. And of course, that turned into a movie with Frank Oz.
Right.
So, yeah. So there they are. They're just creepy.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be nice and unassuming, but they are creepy to me.
Right.
Coming after Felix. And Boris picking the banjo.
Yeah.
For some reason, that just amuses me. So Dracula is kind of sulking because he missed on all 3 times. And she is scolding him for it. And then the monster and the maid show up. And it turns out that Dracula has worked out a new deal. We don't need you. We're monsters. We stick together. But Francesca escapes through a trap door down into the bottom cellar there, where they make the invitations to go out to the monsters, and she sends an invitation of her own out to it. But we don't know it's going to be it until later.
Right.
But she goes through that same shtick where she sends the bat out. Felix is fishing. He says, I do my best thinking when I'm fishing. And the creature from the Black Lagoon comes after him, and he throws a fish back in its mouth, and that puts the end of that. That puts the kibosh on that. Then the monsters, after that whole scene, they finally say, hey, why don't we go down the trap door too? You would think it would be quicker on their think faster, but so they go down. But she's already had time to send out the invitation, so.
Right.
So she has some great shtick here with I've got a torch and I've got Wolfsbane. And wait a minute, this Wolfsbane is for a vampire and torch is for the wait a minute, hold on. Just going back and forth. And then she just ends up jumping out the window.
Into a moat with alligators or crocodiles.
The alligators are gonna get her. So, but Felix saves her, and they're not happy about that. Oh, you're going for a swim? This is where she's crying because everything is just gone, is a disaster because Felix is there. And Felix thinks she's hysterical, so he smacks her. And she instantly falls in love.
Yeah.
What's going on? He smacks her again, too. He smacks her like 3 times.
Yeah.
My
You're
man.
still hysterical. Whap.
This must have been a thing back in the 60s. There he is hauling off and smacking her again.
It's all you need to
And that's
tame a
it.
woman.
She's in love.
Yeah. Oh,
Come here,
Felix.
big man.
I think that, the humor in it, the humor in it comes from women being so emotional and him being so oblivious to it.
Yes.
He's oblivious to everything. He doesn't everything he thinks is going on really isn't. And he's not clued in.
Yeah, he doesn't
And,
realize he's surrounded by monsters.
yeah. And when he gets the invitation towards the beginning, that mailman is saying all the things that are going to be at the island like it's the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And I think he says pretty girls 2 or 3 times.
Oh, okay.
And Felix is like, really? 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 So he's like this clueless guy through the whole movie.
All right. So we get all kinds of symbolism here,
Yeah, there really is. A lot of the
It's a tree falling. I'm not sure what that one means, but maybe Felix can't get it up. I don't know. But she's happy.
a lot of the cartoons in the 60s, when they put the adult stuff in it,
Yeah.
It's put in just like that, where it doesn't make any sense really, but
Train going into
it's
a tunnel.
kind of funny.
So yeah, she sings a song about how he's come into her life, and she's like putting him up on the tree branch. She's incredibly strong. But the funny thing is, we find out at the end of the film she's a robot. I'm gonna go ahead and spoil it right now.
Right.
But there are a couple of times where she's like, "I'm tired. I need to." When they're running from the other monsters, she's like, "I'm tired. You go without me. I need to sit down." So I'm like,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
and Arthur says that he put that line in there
Yeah.
where she says, "I'm no easy pickup."
And she picks him up and puts him on a tree branch.
Right.
The monsters convince Yetch to go against Dr. Frankenstein by saying that Francesca should have been his.
Right.
So there's where she's tired the first time. And this is because there's a man-eating plant behind her that grabs her. And Felix pulls out some of his medicine and he puts it on the plant, and the plant lets her go. And there are flowers on its tongue.
Yeah, which just goes to show you how dangerous all those drugs are that he's taking, which are probably prescription. So
he
they
works
were
at a drugstore. He probably just grabs them.
right.
I don't need a prescription. So the monsters are after them. Oh, and she kisses him again, by the way. It's just like, smack me, big boy. And the monsters are all out there in the jungle looking for them. And Yetch is even out there. He wants Francesca, but he's going to have to settle for a Fresca. And this is one of the scenes where he drops his glasses and look at him. He picks them right back up. He knows exactly where they fell. So he holds up one of his test tubes that he's got in his jacket.
Yeah.
And, why? And of course, that moves the story forward. That's why. It's in the script. So they're afraid because they think it's the doomsday thing that Dr. Frankenstein has created.
Right.
And it's a fun scene where, he's oh, you think this is the dough? Okay, you're scared of that. And then it comes up behind him.
Right. And that was another scene.
Really
Don Duga loves storyboarding that as well because of the humor in it.
Yes. And it, of course, it's a giant monkey. Very popular this week. Frankenstein, Godzilla versus Frankenstein, the new one is coming out this week.
Huh.
So, yeah, there he is. Coming out of the water. Swam over from Kong Island. So, yeah, the monsters are looking up, and Felix realizes that. Wait a minute, why are they looking way up over my head? Why are you looking up? What's going on? And, yeah, then he realizes, he looks up. And that's when, he realized that, oh, my God, it's it. It's Kong.
Yeah.
So Kong knocks him over, because it's easy. And again, his glasses come off, but he picks them right back up. Kong decides to go to the castle, and he grabs all of the monsters in one hand, or most of them. Actually, yeah, he's got Dracula, the monster's mate, the monster, and I think it's the Hunchback, right?
Right.
In his hand. He didn't get the Invisible Man. And didn't get the Wolfman, I don't think.
Yeah.
Got too wily, got away. He starts. Well, first he pulls out a picture of Francesca, so we know that he loves Francesca, like everybody does. And he starts knocking the towers off the castle. And that's when Yet shows up. And he's, oh, you're mine now. Oh, and then he just kind of thumps him.
Yeah.
With a finger, like you thump somebody's ear.
Right.
Flies off in his bait. Up in the air, Junior Birdman. And Felix basically doesn't know what to do at this point. So Frankenstein tells him there's a boat at the edge of the island. I'm going to take care of all of this. You go to the boat and wait for Francesca, or you're going to get out of here. You're going to go and live your life, Felix.
So at this point, they had to recreate sort of the original Kong movie by having those zombie birdmen come in the planes,
Right.
just like they do when he's on the Empire State Building.
Yes. Yeah, the symbolism wasn't lost on anybody, I don't think. I think we all got that. So yeah, he's up on I guess a mountain.
Yeah.
Or what's left of the castle, maybe.
Right.
Because he knocked most of the towers down.
Yeah.
And he's got Francesca in one hand, he's got all the monsters in the other. Or he's got a lot of the monsters in the other, the worst ones. So Felix sees the Frankenstein and the Birdmen arrive in their planes, left over from Orville and Wilbur. And Frankenstein's like, let go of Francesca, it's me you want. And he grabs his plane and got him down. Just shoot him. But no, he's got something special planned. So yeah, it lets Francesca go, and she runs off to the boat to be with Felix. And Frankenstein's got the vial of Super Doomsday liquid. And Gail's got a line. Francesca's got a line here, like "bug out" or something that's very 60s. Right. And it's almost lost because
yeah,
that's like the final thing. Bug out. Let's get out of here. She's got to get away with her smacking man. So Boris says, you're going to see my final creation only for a second, but you'll see it firsthand. And he drops the test tube, and we get the reaction shots from all the monsters between the fingers. And the whole island goes up. Now, you would think that Felix and Francesca are a little too close in that boat. But, hey, it's a kid's movie. Happy ending. Kaboom! Yeah, starts out small, and then you get the nice big mushroom cloud. And then we've got fireworks.
Yeah.
A lot of fireworks over the mushroom cloud, just to add a little effect. And this is when she starts to cry and says, look, we can't have a life together because I'm a robot. And right. Felix is like, well, nobody's perfect. Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Yeah. And that's the end of Mad Monster Party.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
So they
Again,
cribbed
a
the
fun
end of
movie.
so they cribbed the end of Some Like It Hot, apparently, at the end there.
Yeah,
Nobody's perfect.
yeah,
Well, and James Bond ends up, like in like a boat or a raft with like a lot of women at the end of his film.
and
Right,
so
yeah.
does,
So there's definitely an homage to that.
and same with Abbott and Costello when the Invisible Man cigarette is in the
Yeah.
boat and they
I
jump
just want to
out.
make it in on the fun.
So
Yeah. So it had to end in a boat.
yeah, but
Yeah.
like I said, I think the fact that they were robots came right out of a Twilight Zone I watched not too long ago, where they realized that they were robots.
Well, I know there's one Twilight Zone called The Lonely, where the girl is a robot, and they put her on a planet in a rock with a guy who's left on the rock it's like jail. But he's going stir crazy, so like, okay, I'm going to leave you this. And it becomes his wife, and then they have to kill her to get him on the ship because he's been pardoned or something. So
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I'll
not
have to look
sure
for the other
which
way around.
episode it was that I saw,
Yeah,
but it has that kind of feel to it,
it's all 60s. It all ties up to the 60s.
right?
Couldn't get any more 60s than Mad Monster Party.
No, and
All right.
it's a fun movie.
It is.
It's not a serious monster film. They weren't going for that. They were going for the humor and the family friendly feel to it. But there's definitely some things stuck in there that are inside jokes or
Right.
adult type jokes, which makes it fun to watch. And I just love, it kind of reminds me of Aurora models and the Munsters and the Addams Family.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that in there too. Yeah,
All of that. It kind of fits with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And today, that Hotel Transylvania, to me, that was more of like a generic version of the monsters.
Yeah.
The Jack Davis look is really a lot more appealing to me. So I give it a thumbs up.
Well, of course. And we thank you for coming on and sharing with us all the stories, behind the scenes stuff with this training film. And Major Hazzard, are you there?
I'm right here. Learned a lot. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Rick, for stopping by. We always learn a lot when you come by.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, indeed. So thanks again. And everybody, the next one we're going to do on Thursday is a double bear, if you can bear it. We're going to do Prophecy, and we're going to compare it to Cocaine Bear, which should be interesting, to say the least. So Rick Goldschmidt, our expert, all things Rankin bass. Thank you again. I can't thank you enough. And
Thank
keep
you.
an eye out.